I'm William Kelly Skaggs. My date of birth is February the 26th, 1930. Say that I was born in Louisville, Kentucky, which is between, the city is divided by West Virginia and Kentucky on the border. My father went there because he had just graduated from med school, had a severe debt accumulated, and the Great Depression had just started. And the Public Health Service of Kentucky gave him his first job there in Louisville. He did a wonderful work. They transferred him to Stanton, Kentucky for a period of time, and did such great work for the state that they sent him to Johns Hopkins University, where he got his master's degree in public health in 1 year. And in the meantime, as he was getting ready to return home, they wanted them to come to Taylorsville. Taylorsville in 1935 had a severe epidemic of typhoid fever. 35 people died in Spencer County and in Taylorsville. And so he decided he would come there for 1 year. And he ended up spending his life there. After he finished his, the epidemic was in 1935, and we moved to Taylorsville in 1936 when I was 6 years old, and lived on Maple Avenue. And Beckham Snyder had a house that he owned next to Amos Williams, who was a lawyer in Taylorsville at that time. And we moved there and lived my early life on Maple Avenue. Learned to ride a bicycle, and we were still in the Great Depression. My father did so much wonderful work in Taylorsville while he worked for the health department that Taylorsville was the only city of its size in the United States that had 100% water and sewage connection. So we were very proud of that honor, and it lasted for many years. Everybody was growing their own food, and we had a cannery there in behind the high school building, and people would go there and can their food for food in the Depression, and then also because of the beginning of World War II in '41. He became, because of his, he was made a major in the Health Corps and became health officer for Spencer County, Shelby County, and Anderson County. Wow. And made a circuit of those during the war and taking care of soldiers, worked stationed at Fort Knox, and often made trips around the state. And in '45, he decided that he wanted to set up a practice. And so he bought a building that was, Parsons had a lawyer, had an office there next to the foreign drugstore, which was on Main Street at that time, and I joined that building. And in 37 we had such a terrible flood in Spencer County that he tore the inside of the building out and put concrete siding on the inside so that it had the water level of the flood, knew what the water level of the 37 flood was, and he had this stucco-like substance put on the walls up to about 6 inches above that level. Mm-hmm. Typhoid, I don't remember too many cases of typhoid fever after that. The trouble was that people in Spencer County, especially in the city, when we had the floods, the water would cover their wells, and all their water came from storage in wells and cisterns. And so you can imagine with the water being up so that the wells were filled with water from outside, that a lot of times it had sewage in it, and their wells became contaminated. And that was the source of so many cases of typhoid fever, mm-hmm. which was a very serious illness at that time. No antibiotics or anything in 37 to help with something like that. They built the first water plant there in Taylorsville and had sewage lines put in, and it was, like I say, it was the only city of its size in the country that had 100% water and sewage connection. Mm-hmm. And that was something to be proud of, I thought. If you had 3 inches of rain, you had sawhorses stored in your garage. You get those out, some boards to put on those, and then put your furniture on top of that. Hopefully it would be above the high enough so they wouldn't be damaged by floodwaters. And I think it came in twice probably in mm-hmm. Taylorsville. So it went out and then came back. Salt River was backed up far enough that we had a second flood from it. Really, and I think affected our children so much. I think having kids having to wear a mask and everything like that, when there's plenty of proof positive that masks do not help in preventing the disease, at least the type of masks that were distributed around, because the virus could pass right straight through that. And you're wearing a device that traps your germs and maybe other germs in your mask material, and you're breathing that yourself. So you might be setting yourself up for an infection that you might get. Now, if you wear the type of mask that you wear in the operating room, that's a different type of mask, okay? The ones that were distributed, entirely different type. She had the polio was very common. Of course, the ones that most people will remember are the cases where they put on a respirator to breathe for other people while they lost paralysis of the lung muscles and respiratory muscles. Flu shots help seniors more than any other group, and especially if they got at least 3 shots. When we first came, we lived on Maple Avenue, and then there were a couple of houses, new houses being built on, I guess it'd be Cross Street, across from, adjacent to the Christian church, 2 houses of theirs, and Father Wren wanted those. From the place on Maple Avenue, and the second place we went to school at that time was the high school, and school was on the hill that later they built the concrete school building on the top of the hill there. It still stands there now. It was a school that needed to be replaced, and was. When we had wind blow, the building would move. And it was 2 stories, and so when they started, I spent the 1st and 2nd grade there in this old school that's there. And then the 3rd grade, we moved down to what was the new Spencer County High School, which was at the bottom of that hill. And then we moved around quite a bit because of the different sites. And next we went to, they had an old gym at the bottom of where that school was on top of the hill. And they divided that into schoolrooms. And we went there for a while. Then with 5th grade, we spent in the public library, which was on close by there, had a famous for the springs. There had water that tasted silver water, and people would come and get that water, and things like that. We had a lot of moving around as they built the WPA. It was a commission set up by the president and the government to put people back to work, and they would do WPA. They'd come in and work in restoring buildings and things like that. And in this case, we got a new high school building built by the WPA at the Theodore Roosevelt. Well, we had a sweet shop, I guess you'd call it, where a lot of people would meet, and you could go to a movie there, I think, and there were some restaurants that were on the main square that you could meet and eat. A lot of people mostly had their meals there, say after church or something like that. And I think most of those have been converted to something else now. Oh, I just really was interested in it. I started taking pictures when I was a sophomore in high school, and started out taking some 8mm movies, and back then, and just my father liked to take pictures too. In fact, when he first came to Taylorsville, he was working for the health department, and to occupy his time, he built a little theater and showed movies. And I guess one of the first movie houses that Taylorsville had, and it occupied the first building, that I think was the old high school gym that used to be on the school hill, was still standing, and they made that into a movie theater. He would have them deliver the movies to his system. He had the movies came in reels then, and he'd get a big reel and have to break it down into smaller reels to fit his system, and then paste it back together when they sent it back to him. But we usually had westerns or something like that on Friday and Saturday, and then a good first-class movie on Sunday, maybe Monday, and the rest of the time would be closed. Well, they had A grade movies, A grade and B grade. and you usually have a A grade movie would have famous stars and everything like that. The B grade movie would have beginners in it, you know, and lower quality and didn't have a lot. And if you went to a movie back in those days, maybe you go to Louisville and see a movie for a quarter, you go see an A grade movie, a B grade movie, 2 cartoons, and a newsreel. And you could spend about 4 or 5 hours for a quarter, or less. I remember when he had his still theater, you made probably 10 to 20 cents, 25 cents to get in, and then you'd sell them popcorn or something like that, and you'd make a little bit more money off that than you would anything else. It was back in the day when it was 10 cents to a quarter to go to see a double feature. And that all stopped in 1945, and he built his first office there in Taylorsville. And when I graduated from med school and did my internship at the old St. Joseph Hospital here in Louisville, I came and worked for him for about 6 months, and then I was had a choice of being drafted as a buck private in the United States Army, or going in as a full lieutenant in the United States Navy as a medical officer. So I chose going in as a medical officer, and I ended up serving 2 years in the Navy, and it was a great time and a great service, I thought. And when I finished that, I returned to my father's practice. We joined together. We built a new office. It had about 10 examining rooms in it, and a full lab, and X-ray units and everything. And that's now in the hands of Norton's Hospital, I think. This train station, which was across from the Ewan Von Ahn ice plant, and they received the milk. Back in those days, the only way of keeping the milk cool so it wouldn't sour was people would buy ice, or the ice would be delivered to them, and they put it in their containers there and put the milk cans in there to keep them chilled down until they were picked up. And someone brought them to the train station, and they would be transported to Louisville by train. Eventually that was all replaced by trucks. The milk would be loaded onto trucks and taken to, transported to Louisville, where it would be pasteurized and dispensed. And my father-in-law ran that plant, and Vince became owner of the Taylorsville transfer line and to haul milk, and also furniture and stuff that was needed to transport from Louisville to Taylorsville. I guess one of the things I remember more than anything else is when I got married to Betty Spears. I was a sophomore in med school, and I was at the University of Louisville. That was before they had a med school in Lexington in Kentucky. And so on a lark, we had already made the arrangement to be married at the First Baptist Church there in Taylorsville. And on a lark, there was a program on television called Bride and Groom. And my hobby was photography. And we sent some pictures, and I made an enlargement, color print of myself and Betty, my wife. And they chose us out of about 4,500 people to be on the television program. And so they gave us a free trip by train. Before that, they didn't have a good air system in 1952 when we got married. So they didn't have a good, the planes were still unsafe, I thought. So they sent us by train to New York with my mother-in-law as a chaperone. And we got to stay in a more or less apartment building that overlooked the park there, Central Park. And so we had to stay there over the weekend because we had to get a blood test there to get married. Well, they wanted to be sure you didn't have syphilis. Yeah, that would be the main thing. Not spreading syphilis around the country. And so with Betty's mother as a chaperone, she had already planned out what we could do till we had one on the program, and went to Central Park there we saw a lot of different things, and we went by the subways to different parks. We got separated on the subways one time because her mother was a little slow getting off, and we ended up at another stop. Betty was separated. My mother-in-law was on the train. She was left on the train. Oh, well, that was the thing to do in those days. So we had the wedding on this TV program called Bride and Groom, and they gave us a week's stay in the Hotel New Yorker. Furnished. They had 3 restaurants in that hotel, and we didn't have to pay anything for meals. We just go for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and just ate like queens, I guess. And it was very nice. I went to New York with $100, which that sound very much, but back then it was. And I came home with $99.75. So it didn't cost me too much for a week's honeymoon in the New Yorker and everything. The car to ride around in, so it was really something. And something, we ended up with a electric refrigerator, silverware, towels, sheets, everything to get started, a recorder system. Television is still very small. And in Taylorsville, when we got married, the little town shut down for the time that we were getting married, and they still had showing television screens in the windows of the stores for sale. And some people would go there and watch us get married. And the screens probably were, 10 or 12 inch screen back then. They took took a video, I took a movie of the cathode ray tube that had that was showing across the country at that time, and that recorded the whole bit. Then I took that film and sent it across the country to different places. And when I got through showing our wedding at different stations, that before they had all these cable systems set up and everything like that, they just shared it that way. And they gave us the film. And years later, my staff there at Taylorsville had it transferred over from film to tape, and from tape eventually to solid state memory, and I even have it pasted on Facebook. I love them a whole lot.
Okay.
They're very important to see them growing up and making wise decisions and things. Well, my son's name is William Martin Skaggs, and my daughter's name was Janice Lynn Skaggs, and she died about 8-10 years ago. Suddenly, we don't know. They couldn't get an autopsy done to find out exactly what the cause, but we think it was a heart attack. A lot has changed in medicine over the past several years, and some of it too good, some of it not so good. I would hope that I think medicine has deteriorated now because of our way the health system is going. Mainly, as you go see a doctor now, they spend most of their time on a computer typing in their history, and very little time listening to the patient or being examined by the doctor. And I think that's tragic. I think a lot of personal interaction with their physician is missing now because of that computer being involved in it some way. I think that's one thing I visit myself. If I go see a doctor for a problem I'm having or something like that, they're doing this so they'll be sure they'll get paid, and that's why they have to do it. Everything to meet the criteria of the diagnosis they got for you and prove it to the satisfaction of the government. And all that time, I think your quality of care has diminished a little bit.